Welcome. In this video, I take a look back at the one and only Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the entry that is considered by many Heroes fans to be the best in the entire series. But if this is your first time on my channel, good morning, afternoon, evening, I'm Steven Nonsense and gaming and geek culture is what I do. If you're already a subscriber, welcome back, I appreciate it a lot. I will be reviewing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 as something of a continuation of my Heroes 2 review from a while back, so in order to get the best experience, I suggest you take a few minutes and watch that one. Don't worry, I'll wait. Good. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump into Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Complete Edition. I was just as glad to return to Heroes 3 as I was to go back to its predecessor, and thinking back, the last time I played it must have been around 15 years or so ago, with the first time I played it being 19 years ago. Suffice to say, a lot of time has passed. In fact, the initial game was released 20 years ago around this time, and lots of Hero sequels came and went afterwards, but this third installment still stands as arguably the best iteration. It undoubtedly is the best for some. The jump in graphics fidelity and style is by far the most visible and jarring difference when you look at Heroes 3 in comparison with its predecessor, and that's how we looked at the game when it came out. Everything in the game just looked bigger and grander than in 2. Sure, part of it was the fact that Heroes 3 worked on a larger resolution with more colors, but gone is the super colorful fairy tale type of illustration, where you can definitely tell the sprites are drawings, fun illustrations not trying to be something more. Heroes 3's art style sets itself quite firmly apart by approaching things in a more realistic way, let's say. The units aren't 3D models yet, but they are illustrated in such a way that you'd think they could be. And continuing with the comparison to Magic the Gathering I did in my Heroes 2 video, fantasy art had already started the transition towards a considerably more realistic sort of coloring style in the overall gaming industry at around that time. Things had taken a turn from the colorful fairy tale to gritty realism in terms of aesthetics, and this can be seen in the game for both good and bad. The town screens are absolutely wonderful, looking realistic enough to think they could exist. However, the overall look of the game when it comes to the combat encounters is considerably desaturated. This was most likely a conscious choice, seeing as how they obviously wanted to go beyond Heroes 2 in terms of illustration style. Despite this art direction transferring to the map screen as well, things on the map generally tend to be considerably shinier than in 2, oddly enough. Combat animations are more fluid and dynamic, however, you won't really notice them that much if you fight the battles on the fastest speed possible, but it is great that the possibility to customize your combat experience is still there. In terms of overall gameplay features, I'm not going to describe the basics. Odds are if you're watching this video, you kinda know how a Heroes of Might and Magic game works. Heroes 3 doesn't really bring any major changes to the basic gameplay of 2, quite possibly because it didn't need to, but it did add a bunch of new units, features, and several quality of life changes, especially related to unit management and the inventory system. The various unit related changes are quite important from an ease of playing perspective, and these are great additions to the series overall, seeing as how now there are more units for each faction, you can find them all in one place, and populating a hero's army with creatures from a castle has never been easier than simply dragging your hero over the castle's garrison. When talking about the inventory system in Heroes 2, I mentioned how it makes little to no sense, and this is a situation where the sequel benefits from a clearly better design approach. While you can lug around with you a nigh infinite number of items, you can only wear and wield a very limited number of them. Not to mention the fact that there are types of artifacts as well, like weapons, shields, necklaces, etc. No longer can you carry with you 4 weapons, let's say, and have the benefit of all of their buffs. Also, once the Shadow of Death expansion showed up, you could combine certain low-level artifacts into a considerably more powerful combination artifact, which basically gave you the option of going on a separate quest of sorts to forge one of these super powerful items within already running missions and campaigns. The other major gameplay related feature that was introduced by Heroes 3 was the underground layer to the map. Now, maps consisted not only of the usual above ground objectives and components, but oftentimes there was almost just as much space to explore underground. And this is where some of the new factions felt most at home. The gateways that take you from the above ground to the underground are to be closely supervised, especially if they're situated close to one of your castles, seeing as how they can be used by enemy heroes to travel long distances underground without you being aware, at least at the beginning. While new gameplay feature additions are to be expected from a sequel title, what was a bit unexpected for Heroes 3 was its heavy focus on the story and characters, which was offered through the many available campaigns. There were quite a few in the base game to begin with, but once the expansions came around, it made the game into a massively longer story, a veritable Erathian epic which blends in elements and characters from Heroes 2's story as well. Comparing this to the campaign in Heroes 2, where you could only play the same story but from opposing sides, nobody in their right mind will say that Heroes 3 isn't the better title. The campaigns differ in scope, faction use, and mission type. In general, you won't be bored while playing any of the campaigns, but you might become frustrated once in a while when dealing with a timed mission, or you're overwhelmed by the enemy heroes and you prefer a more laid-back style of playing. Usually you'll have to change your style of play to fit the given mission. I should mention that I played the game using an HD mod, which makes it so much easier to be played on modern resolutions. It was more of a necessity thing than a preference in my case, because the out-of-the-box version from GOG had some weird visual glitches on my computer. However, the mod not only smoothed those out, but allowed me to play it in a larger resolution. It makes me kinda sad that there wasn't a similar mod possible for Heroes 2. I'll make sure to link the mod in the description in case you're interested in reinstalling Heroes 3 after watching this video. On a mod side note though, what was done by the community is a complete conversion mod of Heroes 3 called Heroes of Might and Magic 3 The Succession Wars, which basically transplants the everything from Heroes 2 into Heroes 3. So I might have to give that a look soon. Despite me liking this title, my favorite will always be Heroes 2. I should also mention that one of the weirder editions of Heroes 3, the Conflux faction, which is basically the Castle of Elementals, wasn't supposed to be in the game. Or, I don't know if it was, but initially the faction that was to be added with the Armageddon's Blade expansion wasn't an elemental faction. It was in fact a futuristic and high-tech faction called The Forge. And while I have very little against getting some sci-fi in with my fantasy, looking at you, Krull, it appears that the majority of Heroes players at the time were vehemently against this plan, going as far as sending death threats to the developers. The same developers who had already made 2 Heroes games and 6 Might and Magic ones, which by the way have had sci-fi elements in them since at least 1986, and nobody had any issue with that. In the end, does the game still hold up a massive 20 years after its release? There can really be no debate about it, it definitely does. While obviously nowhere near as flashy in the graphics department as its more recent sequels or modern titles in the same genre, playing Heroes 3 is still exciting, challenging, and all around fun, with the occasional grindy map or two. So if you enjoyed my Heroes series of videos, let me know in the comments what should I tackle next. Should I move on to Heroes 4, or should I stay a while and check some Heroes 3 mods out? Of which there are many, and some I hear are astounding. It's up to you. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Steven Nonsense, and if you made it to the end of the video, then I suggest you check out my video on Heroes 2 if you haven't already, and maybe also the one on Fort Triumph. See you next time.